Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk to you about another style of leadership, the behavioral approach to leadership. And there are a lot of theories related to behavioral leadership studies. So let's talk about that and get right into it right now. You know, as you may have heard from me if you've watched other videos, we each have the power to affect other people. And that is really important. When a leader of a team or an organization is not getting the outcomes that he or she would like to get, he or she could blame his people. Or he could take a look at his own self and recognize that he probably needs to do something different or change his behaviors in order to get different results. And that's really important to understand. We all get to influence other people, and leaders truly have the most influence on people as a whole. They set the tone for each level of leaders along the way, and they show what actions are appropriate and what actions are not appropriate. And this is why leaders always need to be absolutely ethical. But they really need to find balance. And what I like about the behavioral approach to leadership is it gives us some tools and some models to be able to analyze, how behaviors may affect outcomes. So if you are not doing your homework or not studying, and you're not doing very well on quizzes in college, quizzes are in place to help you see whether or not you understood concepts. And you could blame it on your teacher if you want. Well, he or she didn't give me the information that I needed. Or you could blame it on yourself because you didn't take enough time to study the materials to learn, because just like planting a garden, you can't reap what you sow. So you just don't plant a seed and then expect it to grow the very next day. You've got to take time and water it and make sure you're pulling weeds and doing the maintenance along the way. And that's what I like about behavioral approach, is it really recognizes, essentially that people need what they need when they need it, just like a garden needs what it needs when it needs it. So using that analogy, you really must recognize that you've got to be giving praise at the right time, you need to be showing appreciation at the right time, and you also need to be giving the directions that people need in coaching, at the right times. And so since essentially the late 50s and early 60s, we've been studying behaviors, actions of leaders, and recognizing that there may be some kind of tool out there to be able to analyze how leaders do things in proportion to the results that they're getting. And so it's one of those academic things where you have to really be able to understand, have a model to look at things so that we can understand how things may work. And that's what I like about this. So there are behavioral approaches to really looking at how leaders get results. The Ohio studies, University of Michigan studies, my favorite, Moot and Blake's leadership grid. Really being able to recognize how a person's leadership style, which we see through their actions or behaviors, gets results, which is important. So how leaders behave or act affects outcomes. We look at task behaviors. This is really taking a look at how a leader focuses on what needs to be done and the results that he or she gets. Then we need to look at relationship behavior, because we are not machines. And so to what degree do leaders help people feel comfortable and are comfortable in their own skin, for instance? But they need to recognize as leaders that their actions do affect other people. And so relationships, to some degree, that can be measured in these models, is really important to consider. In the Ohio studies, an LBDQ leadership behavior description questionnaire. Had 150 questions, and it really was designed to be able to feel out a leader's in industry, military, industry, education, it helped figure out a leader's particular primary behaviors or style. And it was able to measure things on initiating structure, which is essentially the structure that is related to the tasks, behaviors, organizing the work, structure, context, really defining roles and responsibilities, scheduling activities. And then the other thing it measured is the consideration. This is about the relationship, how a leader nurtures subordinates. So, interesting study. About that same time period, the University of Michigan studies did something very, very similar. They really took a look at performance of small groups, and it really had an emphasis on being able to balance employee orientation versus production, and being able to recognize that there are 4 different combinations: high employee orientation, high production orientation, high employee orientation, low production. So you can kind of see that there are really 4 different ways that could be measured through that study. What I love about Mouton and Blake's leadership grid is it broke things down into many more different components, and it recognizes that generally speaking, people have a primary preferred way to lead and a secondary way to lead primarily. But this grid allows for a model to be able to really assess and look at the needs of the team, what style of leader is needed, and be able to help a leader recognize what her primary styles are, and so that she can be able to adjust according to the needs of the organization. So one type is authority compliance. On the opposite end is country club manager. Impoverished manager is another term that Mouton and Blake used. Middle of the road is, has a balance, 5-5. And then team management, which is 9-9, which is ultimately the ideal state to be, high focus on relationships, high focus on tasks. And then paternalism and maternalism, sometimes leaders see themselves as a parent, and they either nurture in order to get better results, or they're disciplining in order to get different results. And then there's the philosophy of opportunism, which really suggests that leaders recognize that they need to make sure that they find the right balance of leadership style in what to focus on, either relationships or task behavior. And so it really is interesting if you as a leader can recognize to what degree, and Mouton and Blake used 1 as being low and 9 as being high, and you could actually gauge your degree of what level of concern you had for production and what concern you had for people, that would allow you to be able to figure out if you are giving the right amount of either production orientation or people, concern for people orientation in your leadership activities. So let's talk about those basic types of leadership. It's probably one of my favorite leadership theories of all time, because it really is important for us to be able to recognize that our actions affect outcomes. And if we are not getting the results we're looking for as leaders, it probably is the fault of ourselves as leaders. Let's face it. We hire the most talented people, but if we're not giving them the nourishment that they need at the right time, and they're failing, that failure really does fall on us as leaders. So we have to take responsibility for our own action and make sure that we are behaving the right way at the right time, and we're matching our style of leadership to the needs of the followers that are out there. So authority compliance really is about having an efficiency in operation results and making sure that the way that we as leaders interact with other people gets the job done. It has a heavy emphasis on task and job requirements and really less emphasis on people. So if you are an authority compliance type of leader, you're probably treating people like numbers. You're probably constantly telling people about, you know, how to do their task, and you're probably really focusing on driving people, controlling and demanding, and probably overpowering people. And in a sweatshop situation, that probably is the right type of behavior, because people know that when they're at work they need to get things done. Will that work in every situation? Well, probably not. Can you imagine applying an authority compliance results driven focus as a leader on, if you were the head of a hospital, for instance, and you have brilliant brain surgeons working for you, and you say things, you've only done 5 brain surgeries this week, I need 10 a day, what's wrong with you, I will replace you, you know, that kind of sweatshop language. Well, probably those surgeons are probably going to have one foot out the door, you know, and be looking for another job. So the right leadership style in the right place really matters. And having the wrong style of leadership probably negatively affects team members. So you want to get the best results as a leader, and so only you get to choose your actions. And so recognizing that if you're in a sweatshop, probably authority compliance probably is the best. If you're not and you want to get different results, you probably need to change your focus. So country club manager is just the opposite. It has a high concern for people and a low concern for task. And so it kind of de-emphasizes, you know, the production. And it really focuses on letting the stress and keeping the attitudes positive of people. Can you think of any place where a country club style of management is important? You know, high concern for people, low concern for tasks. Well, in an industry where you want your employees to treat your guests or your customers like they are important, you probably need to be modeling that for people by treating your people the way that you want your customers to be treated. So that doesn't work in every situation. Can you imagine working in a factory where production is important and you had a low concern for task? You're probably going to minimize your profits, because people probably won't have that focus on getting things done. An interesting leadership style is the impoverished leadership style. And with impoverished leadership style, it's 1-1, you know, low concern for both relationships, people, and low concern for production. And that sounds like a poor leadership style or a non-leadership style. We like to call it laissez-faire. But essentially, if you can imagine, if you have really high-performing people that are experts in their field or creative type people, you don't want to be pushing them too hard. You know, you want to be there to give them what they need when they need it, probably them approaching you, and you're essentially uninvolved. You know, but you are. It doesn't mean that you're not a leader, but it essentially means that your primary leadership style is indifferent. You know, non-committal. Maybe a little bit apathetic. And sometimes applying that leadership style can take down an organization, especially if you need to have a people focus or a task focus. So it's important, though, that when you have people that are doing the right things and competent, that you're not telling them how to do their jobs or trying to drive them to do other things, or you may lose those creative and talented people. In the middle, 5-5 is actually middle of the road. And sometimes there are regulations and policies that need to be in place, so you still have to have a focus on tasks. But you still also need to allow people to be their very best, and in order to do so, you kind of have to remind them of what needs to be done, but not be driving them so hard that you're going to be pushing them away. And I think about in academia, most organizations need to maintain their accreditation, and so making sure that rules and policies are fair and equitably enforced is absolutely important. But you're also dealing with highly educated, teachers who should have the ability to be creative in how they facilitate their education. So really making sure that if your organization has creative people or very highly educated people, that you're there to help make sure that you maintain the level of production, but you're also allowing them to have the freedom to act in a way that won't be inhibiting people. At the very highest scale is 9-9, team leadership. And people really feel like they have a common goal, and that the leader is actively involved in making sure that they're driving his or her people to accomplishing those goals. They're making people feel like they're valued members of a team, and everybody is truly committed to performing. And I think about like really fast-paced restaurants, for instance, or in retail businesses where customers really need to feel valued, and so leaders need to make their people feel valued. But organizational profits may, in order to stay competitive, kind of need to be pushed or enhanced by the fact that people are making sure there's not too many employees on the floor, so that they are getting the job done in the most efficient way too, and still being effective. So ultimately, all teams need to be relationship oriented and need to be production oriented into getting things done, but a leader's leadership style needs to be making the right emphasis, for the tasks that are appropriate for the team. Paternalism and maternalism. These are both 1-9 and 9-1, and it's on opposite ends. And so you're rewarding people who are being loyal and obedient, and you're disciplining or punishing people who fail to comply with the organization. And so it really is a focus on getting results and doing it the right way. You could be a benevolent dictator, being gracious but still asking people to get the job done. Very often leaders disassociate people with their feelings, and really being able to ask people to do the right thing at the right time really kind of takes kind of an art. So really recognize that where you focus your attentions and how you do it determines how you get your results. We can't make people do things, but our choices as leaders affects the way that people feel about you and feel about their jobs too. And so that really is important to understand. The philosophy of opportunism really suggests that we as leaders be able to adapt our leadership style as needed to gain the maximum advantage. And so recognizing that we have a primary leadership style on that Moot and Blake grid, and then a secondary or a backup style that we revert to when we're under pressure is important to understand. So this leadership model really shows that for the team, you need to recognize where you focus your attentions and how you focus your behaviors. And so recognizing what kind of team that you are in and the kind of emphasis that you need to put on either relationships or task matters. If you use the wrong style, wrong emphasis, you could be pushing people the wrong way. Instead of accomplishing tasks, ultimately you may push people out of the organization. So as great leaders, probably the number one rule is sure you're hiring the right people with the right skills and strengths and backgrounds. And then you need to nourish those people with the right style of leadership, giving them what they need at the right time, the right way. All right, I know I've done a lot of talking, and there is absolutely no universal style of leadership that fits in every situation, but recognizing that you as a leader affect other people. If you're not getting the results that you want, it's probably your fault. All right. Thank you so much for your valuable time. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt. Have a great day, because only you get to choose